We're back on Born Before 64 with the author of The Pink Honeysuckle and her wonderful brother, Robert. And we have Barb with us. And, you know, it's amazing how families stick together. The thing that I wonder about is now that she's getting actual fame from this book, and I think that her intentions were really to be not famous in her own right because it was her book, but because she wanted to tell the story, the real story of what life was really like in southern Appalachia. Am I right, Robert?
Yes. The only objection to the family to the book, and I think they're proud of her in writing the book, two of my sisters, they just don't want to acknowledge how we actually grow up and the hardships and all that. Otherwise, they would have no objection to the book, but they don't want their friends and all this to know how we actually lived.
I can understand that, Robert. I can understand that, Barbara, because I think that if you try to forget sometimes when it was really tough, you know, I think though, for children's and generation's sake, it's really important to know, because a lot of people think of Appalachia, they think that they have really no idea, number one. Number two, I think they think of coal mining, they think of cotton, they think of arts, the arts, but they really don't know how tough it was for you each winter, how you had, you weren't sure if you were going to have something to eat on your plate, and how cold it was. I mean, they don't have that. Kids today don't, unless they're living on the street, they have no conception of what it would be like. None.
No, our camping experience from the day we were born, my own statement is that I felt like I camped for the first 17 years of my life, just being so cold in the winter.
And you appreciate today, don't you? And do your children do too?
Oh, yes. Well, the farms on the mountain area was originally all colonized, 40-acre farms that the government had set up and had hand-dug wells, and they was more or less shacks they built, and then people, what is it you call it, where they go out and claim this particular piece of property, and they colonized it. And another mountain not far from us, even in my lifetime, of course I don't remember, but only about 60 years or so ago, it was probably the final place in North Alabama that was colonized.
Right.
And with these.
So were you living more like in a commune in different structures that were put on each piece of land? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
like tenant farmers?
Whenever people went to claim these, they tried to claim the place with a little water on it, the flatter land and all that. And with these 40-acre farms, they would be lucky if they had 25 tendable acres.
Now, if I remember correctly from the book, your father, when he got this piece of property, it was a lot of rocks, and it took all of you kids to actually move the rock so that you could actually plant the first piece of cotton, correct?
Well, definitely, Dad did. I explained, I've talked with you, Kathryn, some about Dad spending half his life clearing land. Rocks were an issue on a hill farm, which we wound up in. Water was a great issue. How do you get water up instead of down?
Right.
We were talking about that today, about how the farmers that lived on the floodplains,
Right.
even though it seemed undesirable as far as having water all over your place, that flood water left wonderful material, and our land was
Barren?
not in good condition.
Barren, would you say?
I think so. How about you, Ben?
Talking about those rocks, no matter how many rocks you pick up, you go back out there 6 months later and
They were
back.
still there.
They come through the ground. But you, what Harry and I were talking about today, you go to the area where I live now and you'll see these beautiful green hills, and you don't see no corn being tried to grow on them or anything like that, but you see a lot of black English cattle on them and grass that's nice and green and all that. And they have tractors now that have the leveling devices that they can keep them cleaned off and all that, and they're not getting all the wash off now flooding the bottomlands and all that. But if you really look close at them though, you can see where they had the erosions on the land from farming them years ago. You'll see a place go
Ruts.
through them and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But they don't try to farm them anymore. Our section of the country was mainly cattle country, not farm country. But what impressed my father so much about a hillside farm is, I guess, through the years from coming from Alabama to Tennessee to visit my mom's folks, he could see corn growing on these hills. And he thought to himself, you know, 3 hours after it rains, I can be back out there plowing. Not realizing once he plows this hillside up, half of it's going to wash away.
Oh. So it wasn't such a smart idea. When did they give up the farm? Or when did they leave the farm, or did they die on it?
I'll take that just to give Ben a little break here. Mom and Dad wound up building another house on the acreage we were on, but this was when I was at the end of my second year in high school. They really stopped farming, I would say. Dad always had he was going to have something growing somewhere. If it was just cattle feed, I don't think alfalfa at the time, but just some kind of something to bale for hay. So he would keep a few cattle all the way through to his 85 years, which he made it to 85. And they never really left the farm. My father died at home. My mother was taken, this is not in the book, she was taken to Georgia by my sisters in her last year of life.
And how old was she, Barbara?
Mom was 85
when she
passed away. But the thing is, they picked her up in that morning in Tennessee, and she had said goodbye to all of her church family. Sadly, though, as she got to Georgia, she didn't tell the girls that she was hurting all the way. They knew she was sick. By the evening, she was in the hospital with a heart attack. She reacted adversely to the medication given to her. Within less than 2 weeks' time, Mama had died. So literally the day that she left her home,
she was heartbroken.
She was heartbroken, and she died within 10 days. So in a way, she never left the farm home.
And on that note, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back with the beautiful story of your lives.
Thank you.
On Born Before 64. We'll be right back.